Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
We all know the story of Die Hard. A down-on-his-luck New York City cop attends his wife's Christmas party at a Los Angeles skyscraper. Terrorists invade and McClane is forced to save the day, saving the building and his relationship. But let's back up a bit first. As we all know, the best movie tales begin with a book. This time it's former private investigator Roderick Thorpe's 1966 action thriller, The Detective, which was adapted into a successful movie 2 years later starring old blue balls himself, Frank Sinatra.
Joe Leland, detective, prowling a city sick with violence.
13 years later, Thorpe saw the film The Towering Inferno and was inspired to write a sequel to The Detective titled Nothing Lasts Forever. This novel was also slated to be adapted into a film as 20th Century Fox had purchased the film rights to a sequel to The Detective before the book was even written, but plans for that fell to the wayside over time. But 8 years later, Jeb Stewart, a struggling writer in Hollywood, was tasked by 20th Century Fox to finally write an adaptation. Stewart was given free rein when it came to adapting the novel as long as he retained the Christmas and LA setting, as producers at 20th Century Fox thought it would make for an interesting aesthetic. Producers Lawrence Gordon and Joel Silver, who were each known for producing action movies like 48 Hours, Commando, and Lethal Weapon, hired John McTiernan, whom they knew from working on Predator together, to direct. McTiernan was initially hesitant to accept, not wanting to make a movie about terrorists, whom he considered to be too mean to make for a good movie. After turning Silver down 2 times, he finally accepted under the condition that the movie be about thieves instead of terrorists, and that the film contained some more light-hearted, joyful moments that other typical action films didn't have. Jeb Stewart worked on the script 18 hours a day, leaving him exhausted and on edge. After an argument with his wife, Stewart went for a drive to cool off, eventually deciding his wife was right all along. After plowing through a big refrigerator box that had fallen into his lane that he didn't know was empty, he came up with the central theme of the movie about a man who should have apologized to his wife before a catastrophe. Stewart went home, apologized to his wife, and wrote the first 25 pages of the script that night. To shape the relationship between John McClane and his wife, he borrowed from the marital problems of his friends. Things like divorces and ex-wives reverting to their maiden name. 4 weeks after that, he delivered a draft to 20th Century Fox. Fox, needing a summer blockbuster for 1988, greenlit the movie the very next day. Stewart changed a lot of things from the novel, like changing the hero's name from Joe Leland to John Ford, aging him down 25 years, John visiting his wife instead of his daughter, the American Claxon Oil Company becoming the Japanese Nakatomi Corporation, giving Al some background, expanding Argyle's involvement in the story, adding an original character, the unscrupulous journalist Richard Thornburg, and lightening up the tone of the story with Western motifs. After 20th Century Fox felt the name change might be disrespectful to the director John Ford, Stewart named him John McClane, choosing what he thought was a good Scottish name, drawing from his own heritage. He came up with a character who was flawed but learns a lesson through the worst situation possible and becomes a better, but not exactly different person. He used his experience writing thrillers for the script, focusing on making the audience care about McClane, his wife Holly, and them reconciling their relationship by the end. Stewart also did keep a few things from the original source material, like McClane crawling around through AC ducts, dropping a C4 bomb down an elevator shaft, jumping off an exploding roof tied to a fire hose and shooting through a window to get back in, and him taping his gun to his back at the climax.
Happy trails, Hans.
Stewart's script would eventually be rewritten by screenwriter Stephen E. D'Souza, who had experience blending the action and comedy genres. He approached the story as if the movie's villain, Hans Gruber, were the protagonist, arguing that Gruber was really the one driving the film's narrative. He focused on Gruber's and the terrorists' monetary aspirations, as he thought it would be more entertaining than any political ones. D'Souza was also inspired by John McTiernan to make the movie take place in one night, much like William Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, as opposed to the original script's 3 days.
I am an exceptional thief.
And he added McClane's now famous catchphrase,
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
after he found out that he and Bruce Willis had grown up in the same town watching Roy Rogers as kids.
I was always kind of partial to Roy Rogers, actually.
D'Souza also visited Fox Plaza and walked around with the stunt coordinator and worked out some stunts for the movie, like John McClane's fight near the end of the film with Carl involving the dolly, the stairwell, and the chains, giving the movie a more genuine feel. Since Die Hard was based on Nothing Lasts Forever, which was a sequel to the detective film, 20th Century Fox was contractually obligated to offer Frank Sinatra the role of John McClane. Sinatra, who was 70 years old at the time, thankfully declined the role. After that, the role was offered to basically all the hottest action stars of the 80s, including, but not limited to, Don Johnson, Paul Newman, James Caan, Al Pacino, Sylvester Stallone, Richard Gere, Clint Eastwood, Harrison Ford, Burt Reynolds, Nick Nolte, Mel Gibson, and of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
What's the matter? The CIA got you pushing too many pencils?
But none of these actors would take the role. They were either not interested or thought the character of John McClane was too wimpy, hiding from the bad guys in AC vents and dimly lit bathrooms. Then the role was eventually offered to Bruce Willis. While he may be known as one of the biggest action stars these days, in the mid to late 80s, Bruce Willis was mainly known for his comedic role in the television series Moonlighting with Sybil Shepherd. Well, that and his wine cooler commercials.
Look here. Seagulls, golden wine cooler, seagulls, golden wine cooler.
Willis actually had to turn down the role in Die Hard due to obligations to Moonlighting, but when Sybil Shepherd became pregnant, production on the show was halted with enough time for Willis to shoot Die Hard.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Casting Bruce Willis was a slightly controversial decision because at the time there was a big distinction between film stars and TV stars. And though Willis had starred in the commercially successful comedy Blind Date, his second movie Sunset was considered a flop. And even though movies like Ghostbusters had shown that it was possible for TV stars like Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd to lead a blockbuster, other stars like Shelley Long and Bill Cosby were much less successful in their transitions.
I'm the best thing that could have happened to you, and you're too stupid to realize.
Willis was given $5 million for the role, a salary that was usually reserved for more established actors of the time. Usually when actors are paid this much, it's because they have a built-in audience that will see the movie during its opening week based on them being in it, with good word of mouth supporting the movie after. Bruce Willis didn't have this built-in audience yet, and this meant that interest for Die Hard would be lower than usual. 20th Century Fox justified this figure, saying that an actor of Willis's potential was essential for the movie, saying that his everyman persona was needed to convey the idea that the hero could actually fail. He's not Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's just an ordinary guy thrown into extraordinary circumstances. There have also been rumors that 20th Century Fox was just desperate for a star after being turned down by so many other more popular actors. But either way, Willis took the role and made it his own, drawing from his working-class upbringing in New Jersey, creating a reluctant hero with attitude and disrespect for authority, with just a dose of black humor. For the film's cunning and ruthless villain Hans Gruber, Joel Silver and John McTiernan cast Alan Rickman after seeing him perform on Broadway. Silver offered him the part, which would be Alan Rickman's screen debut.
I give you the FBI.
Bonnie Bedelia was cast as Holly Jenner. She was actually cast at the suggestion of Bruce Willis, after he saw her in the 1983 drag racing biopic, Heart Like a Wheel.
What does he think he's doing?
His job.
For the role of Sergeant Al Powell, actors like Robert Duvall, Gene Hackman, Lawrence Fishburne, and Wesley Snipes were considered for the role, but Reginald VelJohnson was cast by the casting director Jackie Birch, who had worked with him before.
If you are what I think you are, then you'll know when to listen, when to shut up, and when to pray.
The movie script underwent a lot of changes before and during filming. Since Bruce Willis was pulling double duty with moonlighting, having to shoot the show during the day and Die Hard at night, John McTiernan gave Willis a break, assigning D'Souza with new scenes to write for the supporting cast. These included the scene with Holly's housekeeper, Holly's scenes with Hans Gruber, an intro scene for Richard Thornburg,
Eat it, Harvey!
and more scenes with Al and the FBI.
They're shooting at the lights. They're going after the lights.
But the most important of these extra scenes involved a scene with McClane and Gruber before the film's big finale. 20th Century Fox wanted a scene between McClane and Gruber, but D'Souza was at a loss at how to get these two characters together. That was until he overheard Alan Rickman using his typical surfer-type American accent on the set between takes. He worked this into a scene where Gruber tries to trick McClane into thinking he works at the Nakatomi building.
No, you're one of them, aren't you? You're one of them.
The addition of this scene meant that McClane couldn't know what Hans Gruber looked like yet, so the scene where Gruber kills Takagi was reworked to conceal his identity.
And I'm telling you, you're just gonna have to kill me. Okay.
Filming for Die Hard started in November 1987 and finished in early March the next year. Shooting took place almost entirely on the bottom and top floors of Fox Plaza in Century City, Los Angeles, but also used a set for the lobby where the terrorists hold the partygoers hostage. Since the script called for a building that was mostly unoccupied, Fox Plaza was the perfect location as it was just nearing final construction at the time. The filmmakers were allowed to film under two conditions: no filming during the day during office hours, and no damage to the building from explosions. Fox Plaza as Nakatomi Tower is almost a character in itself, looming in the foreground before McClane even gets to the Christmas party. Action movies call for stunts, and Die Hard isn't short of them. Bruce Willis insisted on doing a lot of his own stunts, and on his first day of filming, he shot the famous scene where John McClane jumps off Nakatomi Tower with nothing but a fire hose wrapped around his waist to ensure his safety. A stunt that involved a 25-foot leap off a 5-story parking garage onto an airbag as a gigantic wall of flame explodes behind him.
I really trained hard for this film and got in good shape. I really wanted to do a lot of my own stunts because I think that always lends a lot of production value to the picture, and it was a lot of fun.
Alan Rickman also did his own big stunt. Usually stuntmen avoid falling backwards to control their fall better, but McTiernan wanted something different for this stunt. For the big finale of the film where Hans Gruber is dropped out of the tower, Rickman was dropped 50 feet from a raised platform and dropped onto a blue screen airbag, allowing for the background to be composited with footage from Fox Plaza. Rickman was told he'd be let go on the count of 3, 2, 1, go, but the stunt coordinator dropped him on 1, ensuring a genuine look of shock and fear on Rickman's face. You can't fake that.
They were very careful to make it my very last shot on the film.
Denizens of the Avenue of the Stars where Fox Plaza is located were put through the ringer as SWAT vehicles were blasted by rockets, helicopters were flown through, and lots of explosions were utilized. Luckily for them, the scene where the helicopter is blown up near the top of the tower was achieved through the use of miniature models. Personally, I love Die Hard. I love the whole series. No matter how many times I watch this movie, I just can't get enough. Not only is it quite possibly the greatest action movie ever made, it's one of the best movies ever made in general. It's got everything. It's action-packed, it's got heart, it's got charm, it's tense, it's violent, it's funny.
Do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
It's simply the best. As huge as this movie really is though, I personally think it boils down to the film's little details. The movie does a fairly good job with exposition, with the stewardess giving John the fuck me eyes on the plane when he arrives to let us know women like him, or the kissing couple at the airport rubbing salt in John's wounds regarding his own troubled relationship, or Holly calling the maid to make sure the spare bedroom is set up for John, and Argyle getting John's story on his way to Nakatomi Plaza.
You thought she wasn't gonna make it out here and she'd come crawling on back to you, so why bother to pack, right?
You're very fast, Argyle.
But it's also the small details running together, connecting perfectly, hidden throughout the script that make it feel whole. Little details like John not wearing shoes the whole movie because a guy told him to make fists with his toes when he gets off his flight, just in time for the terrorists to arrive, or Ellis, a character John suspects has his eye on Holly, giving her a watch for a Christmas gift that almost causes her death later on. And when John first gets to the party, he at first can't find Holly in the directory until he uses her maiden name, Gennaro. This is, of course, a more clever exposition, but also comes in handy when Holly is trying to cover the fact that she's married to John, the very man Hans is trying to hunt down. There's also a scene in the movie where McClane falls down a ventilation shaft and catches onto an opening. The stuntman actually missed the first opening and caught the second one. The editor of the movie kept the take as he felt it looked fine, adding to the idea that this was an action movie where the hero could make mistakes. Speaking of, McClane's everyman persona is just one key to the film's success. He's a great character because he's just a regular guy. He's imperfect.
You're a policeman. There are rules for policemen. That's what my captain keeps telling me.
He has a hard time with his wife, and it's usually because it's his own fault, fucking up every conversation he has with her. But at least he knows it.
Good job. Very mature.
I also like how John talks to himself a lot, letting us know what he's thinking, or telling us exactly why he didn't go in guns blazing like every other action star would have.
Why the fuck didn't you stop him, John? Because then you'd be dead too, asshole.
And as good as John McClane is, he's got a great villain to match with Hans Gruber. Alan Rickman just steals every scene he's in, and you can't wait to see what he'll do or say next. He's unlike other villains you typically see in action movies, giving an almost theatrical performance. He's intelligent, well-prepared, and most importantly, stylish.
Nice suit. John Phillips, London. I have two myself. Rumor has it Arafat buys his there.
All the side characters are great too, even the terrorists who have their moments, especially Theo, who's got all the best one-liners.
2 points.
You didn't bring me along for my charming personality.
Oh my god, the quarterback is toast!
Al is obviously great too, having to deal with the local police chief and FBI.
The FBI is here now.
Want a breath mint? Don't mess with the bull, young man. You'll get the horns.
Big Johnson and Little Johnson, as they're known in the credits, are good too.
I'm Agent Johnson. This is Special Agent Johnson.
Just like fucking Saigon!
I was in junior high, dickhead.
And even Ellis, who sure loves coke, if you know what I mean. Like I said, this film has a lot of heart. It breaks action movie tradition with funny little moments like the big bad SWAT guy getting cut by a rose, or the guy from Lethal Weapon and every other action movie from the 80s and 90s going for the crunch bar. But it can also be violent. When people die in this movie, they fucking die. As great as Die Hard is though, nothing is perfect, and the movie comes with its own small issues. Something that's always personally bothered me about this movie is how McClane knew that Hans Gruber wasn't really a Nakatomi employee. John sees the name William Clay and confirms this guy is who he says he is.
Bill Clay.
But then he gives him a gun with an empty clip. It could be argued that he gave him an empty gun until he knew for sure, but the movie never really goes over this. I've seen more than a few different explanations online, but this one seems like the most rational. Allow me to explain. Die Hard was going through a lot of rewrites during filming. Hell, the ending hadn't even been finalized when shooting started. Originally, there was a scene involving the terrorists all synchronizing their Tag Heuer watches when they got off the truck near the beginning of the movie. Over the course of the film, John notices the bad guys he's slowly but surely dispatching are all wearing the same Swiss watch. Something John would notice. He did notice they all had good fake IDs and smoked foreign cigarettes after all. As we all remember, the wisecracking terrorist Theo gets in an ambulance at the end of the movie in an attempt to escape the incident before being thwarted by Argyle in a good little heroic moment. But as this scene was a late addition during filming, the newly added ambulance wasn't present when they shot the watch synchronization scene. So John McTiernan, in an effort to speed along the terrorist arrival scene so the audience wouldn't notice the missing ambulance, insisted on cutting the scene down a lot, creating a plot hole later on when the watches were no longer an established plot point. But we can clearly see that it's missing, so was it really worth it?
It's pretty tricky with that accent.
Expectations for Die Hard were low. The Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Red Heat and Clint Eastwood's The Deadpool were expected to be the big summer hits. As mentioned before, Bruce Willis' previous movie Sunset flopped and his salary was being heavily scrutinized. Not to mention Willis had gained a reputation as being an arrogant actor only interested in his own fame. To make matters worse, there were rumors of audiences groaning or laughing when they saw Willis in trailers for Die Hard, prompting certain theater chains to pull the trailer in response. Due to all this, 20th Century Fox decided to change the focus on all the film's posters to that of Nakatomi Plaza, with Willis's name only visible in the tiny billing print at the bottom. Willis was also not featured in the movie's first full-page newspaper ad the same month it premiered. Fox denied they were hiding Willis, arguing that they had realized that they had an action epic on their hands and simply wanted to feature the building as a character just as important as John McClane was.
You are so full of shit!
Though after sneak previews of the movie were all positive, ads for the movie started to feature Willis more prominently. Die Hard premiered on July 12, 1988 at the Avco Theater in Los Angeles. A limited release in 21 theaters in 13 cities followed, where it received more good reviews before a wide release across 1,276 theaters, where it earned $7.1 million, finishing at number 3 that weekend behind Coming to America and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which were in their 4th and 5th weeks respectively. In its 3rd weekend, Die Hard fell to number 4 behind the same 2 movies after the opening of Cocktail. In its 4th weekend, it rebounded to number 3, and while it never made number 1, it spent 10 straight weeks in the top 5 grossing movies, earning between $81 and $83 million, placing it at number 7 in the highest grossing movies of 1988 in the US. Adding an outside territories gross of $140 million, it ended up in the top 10 worldwide, all on a budget of $28 million. It was official. Die Hard was a complete and massive success, defying expectations and changing action films in general. The days of alcohol-abusing, womanizing, and macho action heroes were dwindling, and there was a new hero in town. Die Hard proved the genre wasn't dead, and is also credited with revitalizing 20th Century Fox, which was struggling to find success in the years prior.
Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
Die Hard received mostly good reviews from critics. They praised Mctiernan's directing, the cinematography, the stunts, special effects, and praised Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman's performances, often stating the latter was the best part of the movie.
It's very kind of you.
Some did criticize the action and violence, saying the movie had plot holes and lacked credibility, in an effort to pander only to the broadest possible audience, ruining its chance as an intelligent thriller. It solidified Bruce Willis as a movie star and leading man with comedic range, going from being practically nothing to the highest paid actor in Hollywood. Despite all expectations, no one could argue that Willis hadn't been perfectly cast, bringing a necessary vulnerability to the contemporary action hero, one who displays fear, regret, and unsurety without being overly macho. Bruce Willis had earned his place with action stars like Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it wasn't just good for Bruce Willis. Alan Rickman went on to have a huge acting career, with his character Hans Gruber often thought of as one of the greatest villains of all time, ushering in a new intelligent, clever type of nemesis. John McTiernan used his success of Die Hard to facilitate directing the adaptation of one of his favorite novels, The Hunt for Red October. And Reginald VelJohnson's performance in this movie resulted in him being cast in Family Matters.
I thought you said me casa su casa.
No, what I said was mess with me casa and you're out on your asa.
At the 1989 Academy Awards, Die Hard was nominated for Best Film Editing, Best Visual Effects, Best Sound Effects, and Best Sound. Die Hard's influence on Hollywood and action films could not be understated. It served as the gold standard action film and the blueprint for nearly every action movie that came after it for a long time, and its influence is still seen to this day. The term Die Hard on a blank became the shorthand for a movie that had an everyman hero who must overcome the overpowering opposition in a smaller, more confined setting. Throughout the years, we've gotten Die Hard on a bus, Die Hard on a plane, Die Hard on a battleship, Die Hard on another plane, Die Hard on a mountain, Die Hard on Alcatraz, Die Hard in the White House, Die Hard in the White House, Die Hard with Santa, Die Hard in a skyscraper.
I've never seen that movie.
While there have been many, many imitators, none have ever really captured the complete Die Hard experience. And as we all know, with successful movies come sequels. But wait, there's something missing here. Something I forgot. Oh yeah, I forgot to ask the question I'm sure you've all been waiting for. The question that comes up every year around Christmas time. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Thanks to the internet's love of all things edgy, over time the question of whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie has driven that movie out of alternative Christmas movie choices to the possibility of being a real Christmas mainstay. So I've decided to put the question to the test. For the answer, click the link above or find it in the description below. As for what I think, personally I think Die Hard is officially...
Like and subscribe.
The screenplay for Die Hard 2 was adapted from Walter Wager's 1987 novel, 58 Minutes, continuing the trend of Die Hard adapting its story from other material. Budding screenwriter Doug Richardson was hired to write the sequel. He visited JFK International and shadowed air traffic controllers in the tower, learning about scenarios that would end up in the film, like how an airport handles terrorists and what planes do when they are running low on fuel. Stephen D'Souza would once again come in after the movie was greenlit to punch up the action and humor. John McTiernan was originally going to return to direct, but as the turnaround to get Die Hard 2 made was very fast, he was still busy making The Hunt for Red October. Rennie Harlin was then hired to direct. Harlan was fresh off the success of A Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and was the perfect guy for the job. Bruce Willis came back as John McClane, Bonnie Bedelia came back as Holly, Reginald VelJohnson came back for Al, and William Atherton came back as Richard Thornburg. For the newcomers, we've got William Sadler as Colonel William Stewart, John Amos as Major Grant, Dennis Franz as Captain Carmine Lorenzo, Art Evans as Leslie Barnes, Fred Thompson as Ed Trudeau, Tom Bauer as Marvin, Sheila McCarthy as Samantha Coleman, and Franco Nero as General Ramon Esperanza. Die Hard 2 follows basically the same plot as 58 Minutes, with John McClane once again trying to stop terrorists, real terrorists this time, from taking an airport hostage to rescue their military leader General Ramon Esperanza from extradition. McClane is under the clock as his wife's Holly's plane and others is circling ahead, running out of fuel and must land soon or crash. D'Souza would later say he based Esperanza and his henchmen on America's involvement in the controversial Iran-Contra affair in the late 80s. Die Hard 2 was shot at Stapleton International Airport in Denver, Colorado, in Meade, Colorado, Alpena, Michigan, and Los Angeles International Airport, with scenes involving the 747 filmed at Kincheloe Air Force Base in Kincheloe, Michigan. The film features a mix of practical and digital effects that still hold up today. You know, in that warm, fuzzy, tangible 90s way. ILM handled the visual effects with miniatures, matte paintings, optical effects, and digital compositing. CGI was just barely getting started at the time, and this film is a good representation of the shift from practical to digital effects in Hollywood. The famous scene where McClane must escape a cockpit full of grenades by utilizing the plane's ejector seat consisted of using a blue screen behind Bruce Willis strapped to a spinning chair. What looks like McClane flying towards the camera is actually the camera pushing in towards him, and it does still look pretty damn great. Die Hard 2 was actually the first time a movie used digitally composited live-action footage combined with matte paintings that had been photographed and scanned into a computer. This very last scene that takes place on the runway blended these 4 live-action elements into one shot, and it also still looks pretty damn good.
Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
Things are not off to a good start for John McClane, getting his car towed at the beginning of the movie while he's waiting to pick up Holly. But once again, McClane is in the right place at the right time, in a situation where no one of authority believes him, forcing him to do his own police work. He spots 2 suspicious-looking dudes sneaking into a restricted baggage sorting area, and the movie jumps right into the action with a shootout. This guy gets squished like something straight out of the Temple of Doom. Then we get some exposition through some news reports, as well as a nude show.
A phone call from a...
That's always how I turn my TV off now. Die Hard 2 isn't my favorite Die Hard, but it's also not my least favorite. It's great, but the heart the original had is missing, and it's a bit more violent, chaotic, and dark. It seems less put together, like the story is sort of all over the place, and makes the movie kind of unengaging. But this sometimes happens when a movie is an unexpected success, and then studios scramble to get a sequel out right away. It's just less memorable than the original, and stands as a typical action sequel with characters from the first one showing up everywhere. Al is back, Holly is back, and even Dick Thornburg shows up.
That is your name. Dick.
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
But all these B-stories with them are superfluous at best. All Thornburg does is cause some chaos in the airport near the end. Even characters we don't know, like the reporter Samantha Coleman's parts, are whatever.
Now you're the wrong guy in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Story of my life.
It hits all the beats from Die Hard 1. It's on Christmas Eve. I mean, look at all this green and red lighting in the radio tower. Women still love McClane.
Say I close in about an hour. Maybe we can go get a drink?
Just the facts, man.
He rides on top of an elevator, crawls around in an AC vent, and uses the bad guy's radios.
How can the same shit happen to the same guy twice?
But McClane seems kind of unhinged in this one, with some questionable one-liners.
Word is that was your handiwork.
I only do needlepoint.
Supposed to stay in your seat until the plane reaches the terminal. No frequent flyer mileage for you.
So you give me the story and I'll have your baby.
Not the kind of ride I'm looking for.
Where's the fucking door?
And him proving the terrorists are using blanks by pretending to shoot the airport police captain in a room full of other cops with real guns seems like a bad idea, but I guess that's why we love him.
Listen, you're not pissing in somebody's pool, are you?
Yeah, and I'm fresh out of chlorine.
The theme of John versus technology is brought up in this one too. Holly makes fun of him for not knowing there's phones on airplanes, and Al makes fun of him for not knowing how to use a fax machine.
This is a first.
Yeah, well, Holly told me I should wake up and smell the 90s.
There's also a surprising amount of cameos in this, including some early career cameos. We've got a pre-Super Mario John Leguizamo, a pre-Terminator 2 Robert Patrick, Chief O'Brien from Deep Space Nine, the dad from Good Times, and Django himself, Franco Nero.
The D is silent.
I know.
The villains are pretty okay. We don't get a lot of background on them, and there's also 3 of them. We think this guy, Colonel Stewart, is the big bad, but then we learn he's working for General Esperanza, who's the real big bad. And then there's a plot twist later on where we learn this guy, Major Grant, is actually working with them too. I guess they knew they'd never be able to live up to Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber and spread the duty out over 3 people. That aforementioned Major Grant twist is good, if not a little cliche, but it's more about how they did it than anything else. Instead of some boring expositional dialogue, they actually show you what's going on through some gritty action. At first, they dupe you in by making you feel like someone is actually listening to McClane, something that never happens.
You're not such an asshole after all.
No, you were right. I'm just your kind of asshole.
And then they reveal that Major Grant is actually working with the bad guys by him killing off a member of his own team. Someone who had unfortunately just joined them and therefore can't be in on the betrayal.
I wish I was with you guys for that.
Yeah,
Me too, kid. We wouldn't have to do this.
It's just a darker, more well-done moment in the movie to me. It's got a killer finale with John fighting Colonel Stewart on the wing of the plane, Major Grant getting sucked into the jet engine, and of course...
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Die Hard 2 came out on July 4th, 1990, and exceeded all expectations, easily outdoing the box office of the original film, grossing $3.7 million in pre-screenings and $21.7 million in its opening weekend for the wide release in the US and Canada. It went on to gross $117.5 million and another $122.5 million internationally, earning over $240 million worldwide on a budget of $60 million, doubling that of Die Hard 1. Fun movie fact. Demi Moore's movie Ghost also came out the following week and hit number 2 just behind Die Hard, making it the first time the number 1 and 2 spots were held by a married Hollywood couple. Something that wouldn't be accomplished again until 2024 with Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool and Wolverine, and Blake Lively's It Ends With Us.
I'm touching myself tonight.
Critics were a little mixed on the movie, saying it lacked the originality of the first Die Hard but worked as a big-budget action sequel, saying Bruce Willis was still on solid ground as John McClane. Roger Ebert, who had a mixed review of the first movie, called it terrific entertainment, and Gene Siskel put it as the number 6 best movie of 1990. It seemed the Die Hard formula was working. John McClane was here to stay, and there wasn't any doubt that Die Hard would return again to blow us through the back wall of the theater with a third installment. As was tradition at this point in the series, the premise of the next Die Hard was also repurposed from another project. There were a lot of scripts for Die Hard 3, which were ultimately turned down by Bruce Willis due to the fact that they all felt like retreads of the action films that came out in the wake of the first film. There was a script titled Troubleshooter about John McClane fighting terrorists on a Caribbean cruise line, but it was ultimately rejected for being too similar to the 1992 Steven Seagal action movie Under Siege. This script would eventually be repurposed for Speed 2. There were other ideas thrown around, like one focusing on Los Angeles' new subway system, and one involving the kidnapping of McClane's daughter, the kidnappers mistaking her for the daughter of a wealthy industrialist. But nothing came of those. Screenwriter Jonathan Hensley, who was working with returning director John McTiernan on another project, showed him an unused script called Simon Says. Simon Says was about a straight-laced white cop who teams up with a black activist to stop a mad bomber type who had the calling card of Simon. It was originally going to be a sequel to the Brandon Lee movie Rapid Fire, with the activist character that eventually became Zeus written for an actress. But due to Lee's unfortunate death on the set of The Crow, the movie was cancelled. Warner Brothers bought the script and rewrote it as a Lethal Weapon sequel. But when that project entered production hell, 20th Century Fox bought it and turned it into Die Hard with a Vengeance. Due to a falling out between Bruce Willis and original producer Joe Silver on the movie The Last Boy Scout, Die Hard 3 was produced by Andy Vina. And this time, the only person to return to the series was Bruce Willis. No more Holly, and no more Al. Samuel L. Jackson, who had recently been nominated for an Oscar for his role in Pulp Fiction the year before, also starring Bruce Willis, was tapped for the role of Zeus.
As in father of Apollo, Mount Olympus, don't fuck with me or I'll shove a lightning bolt up your ass, Zeus!
Sam Jackson reportedly based his look in the movie on that of Malcolm X. David Thewlis was offered the role of the movie's villain Simon, but he decided to do the movie Dragonheart instead.
I told you! You told me to fight, that's all!
So producers approached Academy Award winner Jeremy Irons for the role. And I gotta say, Irons does a great job playing a relative of Hans Gruber. He nails the sinister but not exactly heartless vibe of Hans perfectly. A guy who's in control and not easily flappable.
You know, your brother was an asshole. Yeah, he really was an asshole.
He was an asshole.
But what can you expect from the voice of Scar?
Life's not fair, is it?
John McClane is back and Christmas is over. It's very much summertime in New York City, made evident by the psychedelic rocking tunes of the Lovin' Spoonful. Then boom, we're off to the races. This time around, someone has bombed the Bonwit Teller department store, and a man claiming responsibility, calling himself Simon, calls the NYPD with more demands in the form of a Simon Says game. He threatens to detonate another bomb unless Lieutenant John McClane goes to Harlem wearing an intentionally provocative sandwich board. John, who's been separated from Holly for a year now and is currently drinking his sorrows down, does so where he's almost immediately confronted by a group of black men who don't take kindly to hate speech. This sign is a wild way to start a movie, by the way. Shop owner Zeus Carver intervenes, saving McClane, and they escape in a taxi. Back at the station, Simon calls again and demands that both McClane and his new friend Zeus must traverse New York defusing bombs and solving riddles.
This, gentlemen, as they say, is where the plot thickens.
Eventually, the CIA gets involved and informs McClane that Simon is Peter Krieg, a mercenary and former colonel in the National People's Army. Then we get the big reveal.
Well, that is an exceptional report. Do you want to tell me what the hell this has to do with me?
The name Gruber mean anything to you, Lieutenant?
Peter Krieg's real name is actually Simon Peter Gruber. He's Hans Gruber's brother from Die Hard 1. Now McClane must continue playing Simon's game running around the city while Simon plots to steal the $140 billion worth of gold bullion from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. This is such a great sequel. Hell, it's even a great movie on its own. Honestly, it's almost the best Die Hard movie. Much better than Die Hard 2. We've got John McClane back, strong supporting characters again, and a villain related to the original. I feel like the heart came back in this one, and it feels like more of a sequel to the original than part 2. The Simon Says game John has to play is a cool device for the movie, and makes it a lot more interesting than usual, raising the stakes a lot. The movie is a lot of fun, and New York City makes for a great location. Feels like we finally get to see where John McClane comes from in this one. Usually, he's sort of a fish out of water, or a small fish in a big pond, but this time we're in his territory. I always like that John McClane is hungover for the whole movie. It just kind of adds a level of semi-relatable humor throughout.
I really do have a bad headache, though. I have a very bad headache. Wall Street is south.
Man, stop yelling at me. I got a bad headache.
Are you gonna be all right?
Got a bad headache.
I've had a bad fucking headache all day long.
This movie has everything. It's a thrill ride from start to finish and keeps you intrigued the entire time. Tension is high throughout the whole movie, with John and Zeus racing around everywhere, answering riddles, there's bombs about to go off, Zeus can't answer the phone in time, a subway train derails, John gets ambushed in an elevator, there's a tunnel filling with water, there's a badass car chase, there's a bomb in the school, they get all the kids out of the school, but there's kids still stuck in the school, crawling on the wire, falling off the wire. It's a perfect action movie. Sam Jackson as the unwilling partner is great. It almost makes for a good buddy cop style action movie, something that would return in all sequels from here on out, which may or may not have been a good thing. We'll get to that later. There's lots of good practical effects and stunts like the subway derailing scene, speeding through Central Park, and the car chase in the rain. The subway derailing scene has always reminded me of the earthquake part in the Universal tour where the subway station collapses. There are some bad effects like certain explosions, odd frame rate decisions, and the water in the tunnel scene, but I don't know, I almost prefer it this way. I prefer when movies used to try and mix practical effects with early CGI, utilizing the CG as a tool to help the practical effect, using stuff like scenes shot at night to cover up how it looked. This is probably because I grew up watching movies in the 90s, but it just feels better. Somehow it feels more tangible knowing they actually shot something and blended it with computer effects to make it work a little better rather than having things be 99% green screen. It actually feels like a fucking movie. This Die Hard no longer takes place at Christmas, but there are plenty of Christmas references in the movie.
Hey, listen, we had a report of a guy coming through here with 8 reindeer.
You mean McClane?
No, I mean Santa Claus.
You know where that park is at 115th Street in St. Nicholas?
Jolly old fat guy with a snowy white beard. Cute little red and white suit. I'm surprised you didn't see him.
It's Christmas. You could steal City Hall.
6 booby traps, 4 dead ends, and a partridge in a pear tree.
I will say the ending is a little lackluster. Simon seemingly gets away at the end before McClane tracks him down to Canada and disrupts his celebration party. There's lots of shooting, the helicopter exploding is very cool, and of course McClane says,
"Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker."
But McClane and Simon don't really get a big face-to-face ending together. Seems like something they'd want to include, considering Simon was Hans's brother and Simon wanted to get revenge for Hans. It's even in the title of the movie, but what can you do? The movie is pretty close to perfect otherwise. There does exist an alternative original ending involving McClane giving Simon a taste of his own medicine. It presumes that Simon's robbery succeeds and McClane is used as a scapegoat for all the bad stuff that went down in New York. It's also mentioned that McClane was fired from the NYPD after 20 years on the force, the FBI took away his pension, and he's even officially divorced from Holly. McClane is able to track Simon down using the batch number on the bottle of aspirins they gave him, and they meet in a bar in Hungary. McClane gets his own revenge on Simon by playing a form of Russian roulette with a small modified rocket launcher that's had its sights removed, making it impossible to know which end is which. McClane asks Simon his own riddles, and when Simon can't keep up, McClane forces him at gunpoint to fire the launcher, which ends up killing him. Screenwriter Jonathan Hensley has stated that this ending was changed because the studio thought it was too cruel and menacing a thing for John McClane to do, killing Simon for revenge rather than in self-defense. Hensley disagreed, defending himself by saying his intention was to show that the events in New York and the subsequent repercussions had tilted McClane psychologically. The studio also didn't like the lack of action in what was supposed to be the climax of the movie, not to mention the fact that it took place sometime after the film's main events, breaking the usual Die Hard formula in which the plot usually unfolds in about 12 hours or so. The new ending is better in my opinion, and it's a good thing they didn't use this, as they didn't know it yet, but there were more sequels coming. Die Hard with a Vengeance opened in theaters on May 19, 1995, a whole 5 years after Die Hard 2. Despite concerns about the movie portraying bomb threats by a terrorist with the Oklahoma City bombing having just happened a month prior, the movie was released as scheduled and was a massive success. It earned $22.1 million on its opening weekend, ranking number 1 against Tony Scott's Crimson Tide. It went on to gross another $100 million in the US and Canada and another $266 million in other territories for a worldwide gross of $366.1 million on a budget of $90 million, making it to the top 10 grossing movies of 1995. Critics liked it too, praising Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson's chemistry, Jeremy Irons' performance, the story, and of course the top-notch action, marking it as one of the best action movies of the decade, leaving contemporary imitators like Bad Boys, True Lies, and Speed in the dust. These days, it's considered as one of the best chapters in the series and the best of the sequels. Die Hard had proved a success 3 times over. It was still on top of the action movie world with no signs of stopping, but it would be a whole 12 years before we got to see John McClane grace the silver screen again. After the success of Die Hard with a Vengeance, 20th Century Fox immediately started working on a follow-up fourth film. In 1997, they bought a script written by Alan B. McElroy titled Tears of the Sun, about a group of people setting up a relay station deep in the Amazon jungle who are captured by a drug lord and his gang. Fox decided they wanted to rework this story into Die Hard 4, but this never came to pass. Bruce Willis liked the title Tears of the Sun so much that he used it to retitle one of his movies that came out in 2002 in exchange for starring in another Die Hard movie. I'm sure you've mistakenly heard the movie trivia fact that Tears of the Sun was supposed to be the fourth Die Hard movie, and this is why. The fourth film's real plot is based on a script called WW3.com by David Marconi, the screenwriter of 1998's Enemy of the State. Marconi used a Wired magazine article by John Carlin titled A Farewell to Arms, about a fictional three-stage coordinated cyber attack on the US called a fire sale. After the 9/11 attacks, the project was stalled and eventually halted. Several years later, it was rewritten by Doug Richardson and Mark Bomback and became Live Free or Die Hard. The movie was originally going to be called Die Hard Reset or Die Hard 4.0, as it revolves around computers and cyber terrorism. And in fact, it still goes by Die Hard 4.0 everywhere outside the US. But later into production, Fox changed it to Live Free or Die Hard, based on New Hampshire's state motto, Live Free or Die. Director Len Wiseman was brought on board to direct after the success of his action horror series, Underworld. Wiseman wanted to reinvent Die Hard and make it new without taking away what made the original great. The movie also stars Justin Long as McClane's new reluctant sidekick, Matt Farrell, everyone's favorite manic pixie dream girl, Mary Elizabeth Winstead as McClane's daughter Lucy, Timothy Olyphant as the new villain, Thomas Gabriel, and last but not least, Kevin Smith cameos in this one as the Warlock, a fellow hacker of Matt Farrell's.
What'd you bring your dad here for?
Live Free or Die Hard started shooting in late September 2006 in downtown Baltimore, Maryland. The film also utilized 8 different sets at a few different studios. For the effects in the movie, both director Len Wiseman and Bruce Willis wanted to use a limited amount of CGI. Obviously, there is a lot of CGI in this movie, but a lot of it is practical too, combining real cars and real stunts with simulated backgrounds. One thing that seems like part of this movie's lasting legacy is that this is the first Die Hard movie to be rated PG-13. Obviously, Fox did this to help the movie gain a wider audience. A lot of movies at the time were doing this, giving a PG-13 rating to a sequel in a series that had traditionally been rated R. Die Hard 4, The Expendables 3, Terminator Salvation, and we all know movies like Venom and Suicide Squad should have been rated R from the get-go, but it's about money over substance with studios these days. Luckily, the movie doesn't feel too watered down by this decision in my opinion, and due to the level of intensity of the action, as well as the usage of some profanity, you might not even realize it's not rated R if you didn't know going in. Though blocking out McClane's iconic Yippee-Ki-Yay line does seem sacrilegious.
Yippee-Ki-Yay, motherfucker!
We did get an unrated version later on Blu-ray too though, so I guess the point is kind of moot now.
Yippee-Ki-Yay, motherfucker!
I really love Die Hard 4. This is the first Die Hard I ever had the pleasure of seeing in theaters. After binging the original trilogy over and over on DVD in high school, I was more than ready to see what would be next for John McClane on the big screen in a post-9/11 world. We get kind of a different John McClane this time around. He's officially divorced, his kids are older, he's bald. The movie stakes are so high it's almost like the story is too big for him or something. He's not just a guy in a dangerous situation anymore. He's a guy in an impossible situation. And once again, McClane is the only one who seems to know what to do with no one listening to him.
Special Agent Johnson, we'll take this today.
Agent Johnson?
And they've officially swapped Christmas out for summer. Technically, this is a 4th of July movie.
Good morning, D.C. Well, it's shaping up to be another beautiful 4th of July weekend.
As mentioned, his daughter Lucy from the first Die Hard is in this one, and she's a great addition to the franchise. Technically, she's been there since day one.
McClane residence, Lucy McClane speaking.
She and John have a tumultuous relationship with each other, reminiscent of John's relationship with Holly. Lucy insists on calling him by his first name. McClane really has a problem with the women in his life and names.
Lucy McClane.
It's not McClane. It's Gennaro.
She fits right in.
Let's step outside, just you and me. We'll see who hurts who.
You really are his daughter.
And John's new sidekick, Matt Farrell, is good too. He's the typical nerd hacker type character who complains about asthma and low blood sugar, and their juxtaposition is good, if not a little obvious. Justin Long is good at delivering his lines so casually.
How'd you do yours? Big one's line.
Good luck at the Bad Timing Awards.
I have a real soft spot for this movie. It's like Scream 4. It's one of the best of the series, it's just not part of the original trilogy. It's a perfectly qualified Die Hard and is a great movie, it's just following slightly better entries. John's never-ending battle with technology returns in full swing, and he's the worst guy for the job as he and Matt must take on Thomas Gabriel, who's orchestrating a cyber attack on the US designed to disable the nation's infrastructure.
This is virtual terrorism.
Timothy Olyphant plays a great villain, with some strong menace and some good lines.
What's with all the guns?
Think of them as hardware to your software.
He's arguably the most powerful villain of the series, with his seemingly unstoppable ability to control all the tech in the movie and using the media to control how people perceive things. He has a pretty slick video put together that acts as a terrorist threat consisting of US presidential speeches cut together.
My fellow Americans,
it is time to strike fear into the hearts of citizenry.
All the vital technology that this nation holds dear,
their fate
now rests
in our hands.
Thank you. And a happy Independence Day to everyone.
That was creepy. I tried to find more Nixon.
And he manages to trick everyone into thinking he's blown up the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. with a fake video.
Bowman, you see that? Bowman, it's a fake!
Thank God.
Since the movie came out over a decade after the last one, the movie's got a newer, more modern look compared to the original three. Well, modern for 2007, but it's good. It's a Die Hard for the digital age. There are a lot of cool stunts, especially with Gabriel's minions using the parkour that every action movie seemed to be super into using during the mid-thousands to try and catch Matt.
It's a circus in town? Did you see that? I saw it, I did it. Damn hamster.
In my opinion, this is because Casino Royale did it so well with their opening scene in 2006 that everyone else wanted to do it too. No complaints here.
Parkour! 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 Parkour!
As much as he and the series have changed a bit, John's the same old McClane. He still talks to himself.
All you gotta do is go pick up a kid down in Jersey, drive him down to D.C. Thing like a traffic jam? Throwing a car at me? Gonna stop me, huh?
And the series lives up to its name with top-notch action.
You just killed a helicopter with a car.
I was out of bullets.
It kind of goes off the rails a bit near the end with an F-35 jet versus a semi-truck, but fuck yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. I remember this part blowing my fragile little mind when I first saw it. That was so fucking cool on the big screen.
I have my moments.
I'm a massive Kevin Smith fan, so him being in this one was a treat for me. Since he's such a Star Wars nerd, they made his name say Kevin Sith in the opening credits. If you're a fellow Kevin Smith fan, he's talked a lot about his experience working with Bruce Willis and Die Hard on a few occasions. Some good stories, some bad. And eventually it did lead to them making Cop Out together, for better or worse. Check out Sold Out, A Threevening with Kevin Smith, or there are plenty of Comic-Con clips online of him sharing his experiences, and they are definitely worth a watch.
Why'd you bring a cop into my command center?
Command center. It's a basement.
Who is this man?
Live Free or Die Hard came out in the US on June 27, 2007, debuting at number 2 behind Pixar's Ratatouille. It made $9.1 million on its first day, the best opening day take of any film in the Die Hard series, and made $33.3 million on its opening weekend. It went on to make $134.5 million domestically and $249 million overseas for a combined total of over $383 million on a budget of $110 million. It was the 12th highest grossing film of 2007 and is the most successful movie of the series to date. Critics and fans alike liked it too, praising the stunts and performances, saying if you love the original trilogy, you'll love this one too. They likened it to the recent Rocky Balboa, which was another persevering series featuring an over-the-hill but still vital hero that serves as a good nostalgia trip. After all this time, Die Hard was still the king of action films. In 2010, it was announced that Skip Woods, the writer of X-Men Origins Wolverine and the A-Team, would be writing Die Hard 5, making this the first time a Die Hard movie would have a completely original script. He worked off a concept that Bruce Willis came up with about John McClane dealing with his relationship with his estranged son, Jack. Noel Murrow was originally going to direct, but left production to direct the 300 prequel 300 Rise of an Empire. John Moore, who directed Behind Enemy Lines, Flight of the Phoenix, The Omen remake, and Max Payne was next in line to direct. The original title for Die Hard 5 was Die Hard 24/7, but since this seemed to cause confusion in the media about whether or not the movie was a crossover with the Kiefer Sutherland action drama TV series 24, eventually the movie was retitled to A Good Day to Die Hard. At this point, the setting for Die Hard was getting bigger and bigger with each subsequent film. The first one was set in an office building, the second in an airport, the third was New York City, and the fourth one was a threat against the entire United States as a whole. And for part 5, they were going for broke with Russia? That's right, John McClane is heading to Russia. He's got to get his estranged, big surprise there, son Jack out of prison. And it turns out Jack is an undercover CIA agent.
007 of Plainfield, New Jersey.
In typical Die Hard affair, McClane and his son are soon caught in the crossfire of a global terrorist plot. For the role of Jack McClane, actors like Liam Hemsworth, Aaron Paul, and James Badge Dale were considered before producers eventually decided on Jai Courtney. Mary Elizabeth Winstead did show up for the beginning and very end of this movie, but this time it's a father and son adventure. And for this movie's big bad, we've got Sebastian Koch as Yuri Komarov. Shooting began in Hungary in April, with the capital Budapest standing in for Moscow. A military shooting range near Hajmasker was used for shooting live ammunition, while vehicular stunts were shot at the Ungava Ring, a Formula 1 racing circuit in Moigorod. Please tell me I pronounced that all correctly.
Well, you asked for a large bag of hair on the way to Taganska courthouse. but I got it.
Director John Moore wanted to put the audience in McClane's shoes, saying that McClane was in a strange world, with little or no control over his environment, unable to anticipate things as he normally might. Moore wanted the camera to mimic that surprise and confusion of McClane being caught off guard and shot most of the movie handheld with cameras equipped with long lenses to capture tight close-ups. Moore also chose to create as many of the film's effects as practically as possible, similar to the rest of the series, only using CGI to enhance elements or paint in backgrounds, while real explosions and real stunts use blue or green screen backgrounds. They also invented a motion base that basically works like a flying simulator that they could put any vehicle they needed onto. They'd shoot the fronts of cars or even the fronts of helicopters and then match it to the footage of the actual stunt they'd shot separately.
Oh, for the love of... Hi, honey.
Dad, can you hear me? How's Moscow?
Want it right back?
Wait, no, don't.
The movie opens on a black screen with audio of police sirens and general mayhem going on, and then bang. We're in the movie getting all the exposition we need in the first 10 seconds from the news. This guy, Yuri Komarov, former billionaire and government whistleblower, is being incriminated by this guy, Viktor Shagarin, in a rigged trial unless he hands over a secret file that can incriminate him. Meanwhile, Jack McClane is arrested after a botched assassination attempt and negotiates for a shorter sentence for testifying against Komarov. Lucy McClane drops John off at the airport so he can fly to Russia and find out exactly what his son has been up to. A Good Day to Die Hard is my least favorite Die Hard movie. It's a far cry from what it used to be. It feels more like a Bruce Willis movie than Die Hard, and it leans really hard into the action side of the movie and kinda loses the nuance that made the series great. It goes a little too hard in the new age of action movies. John McClane also seems really different in this one. The movie goes out of its way to point out that he's old right away.
Nice grouping, Grandpa.
First off, John seems really out of his element. He's really in over his head this time and actually makes things worse for his son. His naivete to Jack's spy stuff makes him look slow and stupid.
Well, great, Jack. Let's drop him off at the embassy and we can go home.
You kidding me?
McClane's wisecracking is still there, but that's hit or miss too. Scenes where Jack breaks John's phone and he complains about the wasted contract, or when he punches this guy and tells him he can't speak Russian like a typical American who wants foreigners to speak English, are supposed to be funny like we're on John's side of the joke, but it doesn't always work.
Do you think I understand a word you're saying?
He's just kind of an asshole in this one. I mean, he's an asshole in all of them, but it seems like we're on the receiving end this time due to Jack sharing half the story. We all love John McClane, but let's be honest, it would really suck having him as a dad. It also seems like he's been reduced to a side character in his own franchise, bitching about being on vacation while shit blows up around him. Something he mentions 50 times.
Jerk off! Alright, let's move, John! On fucking vacation!
Take it easy, odd job. I'm on vacation.
I'm on fucking vacation!
You think you're so smart?
I'm not that smart. I'm just on vacation.
John also seems a little too indestructible in this one, which goes against the ideals of the first Die Hard. Audiences in the 80s were used to the hero taking on hordes of adversaries without getting hurt. Or when they did get hurt, it didn't seem to matter much, with the hero powering through impossible scenarios. But John McClane was different. Shoot him, he bleeds. When he gets his feet all fucked up from running on the glass, he needs time to hide out and recover. And by the end of the movie, he's a total mess. But by the time we get to Die Hard 5, he's basically in God mode, flipping cars a dozen times and walking away without a scratch, jumping out of buildings, and being thrown through glass windows in terrible CGI money shots that last way too long. Also, making fun of his son for having some literal fucking rebar stuck in his side seems hyper-masculine.
You're not gonna cry, are you? Just pull it. Everybody needs a good cry once in a while, Jack.
Gonna cry?
I guess it really is hard to kill a McClane.
It's hard to kill a McClane.
Admittedly, I remember this movie being pretty disappointing when I first saw it, and it was still pretty bad on my rewatch for this video, but there is a good movie in here somewhere. There's a decent little scene where McClane gets deep about being a father. He talks about the fact that he thought working all the time when he was raising Jack was a good thing, and that he thought he was being a good dad, something that was probably true for him at the time. As ephemeral as this scene is, they really needed this scene or John was just going to look like a dick the whole time. There are other lighter moments that are good, like when McClane sneaks into a building by fast-talking an employee for a key card for everyone instead of fighting their way in, McClane's ringtone being Ode to Joy, or doing the laughing to distract the bad guys thing like in the first one. And there is a good moment in the taxi cab where the driver sings Sinatra's cover of the theme from New York, New York, which is most likely a reference to The Detective.
Frank Sinatra.
Brand new start of it.
And there are good moments with his son where you see he does care for him, where the John McClane we know and love from the other movies shows up briefly.
It's fun. Running around with you.
But they pale in comparison to how basic the rest of the movie is. Bruce Willis mostly just seems bored in this one. And he kinda did in part 4 if I'm being honest. Bruce is a great actor and he cares about the roles he plays and the movies he's in. At least he did. He's best when you can tell he actually gives a shit.
Let me ask you something. You go looking for trouble, or does it always just seem to find you?
You know, after all these years, I still ask myself the same question.
I will say the action and stunts are awesome. The series is officially back to being rated R and takes full advantage. There's a great car chase with lots of flipping cars, the stunts are cool, and there's lots of shaky cam and wild editing. But while the action is top-notch, that's kind of all this movie has going for it. Movies are better when they are completely practical, but as movies get bigger and bigger every year and every sequel, it gets harder and harder to make these huge ideas real. Die Hard had gotten too big for its own good at this point. The plot is a very typical action plot, with the usual twists and turns, and is not to be taken seriously. There's a lot of bad dialogue, and at one point the bad guys mention that they were behind the Chernobyl disaster. Okay. And of course they go to Chernobyl, because it's Russia, right? I mean Ukraine. They go into a vault that's like dead center of Chernobyl and take off all their safety gear because they were able to conveniently neutralize the radiation with these tools.
All clear. We can ditch this hits.
I'm no radiation biologist, but I don't think so.
Compound 274. It neutralizes radiation. Trust me.
In the end, there's no file in the vault, and it's all about money.
When's it not about money?
They copy the ending shot of the first one by throwing the big bad off the building, which seems kind of sacrilegious, until he hits the spinning blades of the helicopter's tail rotor. Then it's awesome. And there's a great final shot with the helicopter crashing, and the camera follows it all the way down, with John and Jack diving into a pool of water as the helicopter explodes. The action goes so far over the top that it comes all the way back around again, and you just gotta admire how insanely over the top it is. It's safe to say the movie goes out with a bang.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
After John saves the day, we get a closing scene where we see all the McClanes together at the end, and the series concludes on a cheesy but still touching moment. Before its wide release, 20th Century Fox held a special tribute to the 25th anniversary of the Die Hard series by unveiling a mural of the movie on Soundstage 8 of the Fox lot and a premiere showing of the movie. 2 other premieres were held in Berlin, Germany on February 4th, and in London, England on February 7th. A Good Day to Die Hard was officially released in the US and Canada on February 14th, 2013, opening in first place for the 4-day President's Day weekend with $36.8 million. It ended up grossing $67.3 million in North America and $237.3 million in other territories for a worldwide gross of $304.6 million, on a budget of $92 million. This one has my personal favorite tagline. Critics did not like A Good Day to Die Hard, calling it the weakest entry in the storied franchise. They said it was entertaining and had good special effects, but lauded the action for being too implausible, condemning it as unbelievable, over-the-top action scenes linked together by an uninspired plot. They also complained that the series had lost its distinction, and had been dumbed down so much that not even Bruce Willis could save it. A disappointing chapter for the series known for pushing the envelope and being the best action had to offer. Even before A Good Day to Die Hard had begun filming, Bruce Willis had been saying he wanted to retire John McClane in a 6th and final film, explicitly wanting a fleshed-out conclusion for the character and series. There were lots of ideas for Die Hardist, including my favorite idea that involved John McClane visiting the Nakatomi Corporation headquarters in Japan for what would have been the 35th anniversary of the Nakatomi incident. Terrorists invade the party and McClane saves the day one last time. Lots of crossover ideas with 24 were thrown around again, and Live Free or Die Hard director Len Wiseman even said he had a prequel script ready to go called John McClane that was based on the Boom Studios graphic novel titled Die Hard Year One that would have featured John McClane early in his career as a beat cop in New York City, as narrated by Bruce Willis in the present day. Wiseman even said that he was ready to cast, and there were rumors that Sam Jackson would have come back too. As time went on, Disney ended up buying 20th Century Fox, pumping all the brakes on all production talk for future Die Hard movies. Len Wiseman went on to direct Ballerina, a spin-off in the John Wick franchise. And other than rumors of a possible TV show, it seems Die Hard has been removed from the Fox calendar indefinitely, which is probably for the best, knowing Disney. It's too bad we can't go see one last Die Hard one last time. The series could have had a better send-off. But hey, at least we got the commercial for Die Hard car batteries, right? As for Bruce Willis, in March 2022, Willis's family announced that he had been diagnosed with aphasia, a disorder that affects a person's language expression and comprehension. In February the next year, his family announced that he had been diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. Bruce Willis has obviously retired, and is spending his remaining years away from the limelight in dignity with his family. He'll always be remembered for his action and leading man prowess, his ability to carry a tune, and most of all, Die Hard and John McClane.
Next time you have a chance to kill someone, don't hesitate.
Thanks for the advice.
And that's Die Hard. The film's legacy lives on as one of, if not the greatest action movies and series of all time. The United States Library of Congress added Die Hard to be preserved in the National Film Registry in 2017 for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. Fox Plaza in LA has become a popular tourist attraction. Bruce Willis even donated his undershirt he wore in the first film to the National Museum of American History at the Smithsonian Institute. The movie lives on in references in other media too. From movies having the same basic plot and location, to references in film.
Sorry, my mistake. No problem. Freeze!
I'm thirsty.
I said freeze!
I'm just getting a drink.
Bruce?
Willis, yeah. I spent a lot of time in air ducts.
Don't take no chances. We're afraid to fool.
Good advice.
to references all across the board in television.
Nakatomi Plaza.
Yippee-ki-yay, Mama Jama.
Dude, you didn't say Die Hard.
Almost.
Who do you root for in Die Hard?
Hans Gruber, charming international bandit.
Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
Next time there's a sandwich in the fridge with somebody's name on it, don't eat it, scumbag.
And Alexander wept, for there were no more worlds to conquer. Hans Gruber, Die Hard.
You wouldn't do that.
Why's that?
Because you're a policeman. Policemen have rules.
It's the action movie that gives action movies a good name. For 4 consecutive decades, John McTiernan and Bruce Willis proved that no one dies harder than John McClane. Maybe some things do last forever. Thanks for watching The Lamphouse. If you like this video, or if you're a fan of action, horror, or just 80s movies in general, be sure to check out my other videos at the links in the description or playlists on the channel. I've got something for everyone here. Watching another video right after this one also really helps out with the algorithm, so feel free to check them out. And be sure to give this video a like and subscribe if you like what you see. See you soon.